Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going pretty great. I'm at Gamescom.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I know.
It's a big, long flight from Irvine to here.
Oh, yeah, with lots of jet lag, too.
Yes, lots of jet lag. I'm definitely with you on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, chat.
So, Junkertown, man.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I can't really do the, Junkertown. No, it doesn't work for me. But, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I noticed that in the first section of the map, it's a lot more wide open in comparison to a lot of the other maps in Overwatch so far. It was pretty refreshing, honestly, to sit there. It's like first time I load up a map and I just see all the different flanks I can go on instead of just being a singular choke point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, I don't know, I think a lot of people are going to like that change for Junkertown in particular.
Well, it's a nice break from the rest of the map. Like early on, there's not a lot of high ground either. It's pretty limited.
Yeah.
It was in a couple of the first buildings, there's some ledges, but then later on, there's a little bit more,
There's a lot of flanking routes.
Definitely.
Did you guys encounter any, I know Blizzard, you guys tend to make maps over long periods of time internally. Can you say how long Junkertown start to finish has taken? Because it looks like a very detailed map with lots of different flanks. The art on it is amazing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. I'm not sure exactly when we started it, so I can take you through the process. Early on, we figuring out hey, what's the next map we're going to work on?
Yeah,
and it's kind of a crazy thing because there's so many different places we could make maps. We want to do. It's because Overwatch is set in the future, on Earth. There's all these great locations that people that we want to do, that players suggested. Different fans from all around the world are we want a map, and we're trying to figure that all out. But with Junkertown, it was really hey, we need to tell some. We really want to delve into Junkrat and Road Dogg. So, first we figured that out. Then, I want to adjust this mic. And then really the sort of process is, okay, it's going to be an escort map. That's what we wanted to make another escort map because I think with this one we have 4 of each of them now.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Then one of our level designers just starts sort of blocking it all out with gray boxes. There's no art whatsoever. It's just strictly all gameplay.
But yeah, I noticed I guess when you guys really start developing a map, early on in the process, it's sort of just placeholders for everything before you lock down, okay, we want a choke point here, a flank here, and then you start developing all the art later.
Yeah, it's definitely a process. like I said, all the stuff you're looking at now, imagine it was all just literally gray walls.
Yeah.
Right? And like I said, we knew, early on, there was the idea that, hey, we will make it pretty open, but then, figuring out it's oh, we do need some high ground here. And it's the first little bit of high ground, it wasn't deep enough, so you couldn't really play effectively up there.
Yeah.
So it was oh, and we put this connector you're walking on, just really sort of build it out pretty organically. And that happens with playtests. So super early on, the map isn't even fully done. We started playtesting just this first area, right? And again, that's where we're adding little flanking routes, taking away some because I think at one point you could go all the way around to the left.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I noticed there was this fence here.
Yes. Right. At one point, that fence wasn't there.
Yeah,
and
that makes a lot of sense.
It's it's all right. That's too crazy.
Yeah.
So just working through with the playtest, figuring out where you can defend from, where the flanking routes are, going section by section.
Yeah.
Continue to playtest. And then that point when we really feel hey, we've got this solid foundation of gameplay, that's when, well, I guess one step, our writer works with our artists sort of try to figure out what the full story behind this map, because we don't want to set the artists loose without feeding them as much inspiration as possible.
You want to ground them in the universe.
Yeah.
As best as possible.
Yeah, or it's not just grounding them, actually sort of just giving them a nice springboard for their own creativity.
Yeah.
Right. And then as the artifice, areas, a lot of it's hey, what are we going to put in this room? And like, well, what is this room? Like for, in like reality.
Yeah.
They're like filling it out with, it's like, hey, what if they had like set up a little karaoke bar, or I don't know if that's actually a karaoke, right? It's whatever they're doing here, right? And then because we got work towards like making the various props, this little bar scene, just like, again, sort of filling out like the story, like figuring out the names for all this stuff. It's a really like awesome organic process between like, level designers, our writer, Michael Chu, all the like level artists, the artists that work on the props. I mean, a lot of different people work on it, but like, it's kind of funny because like I haven't even like for this like map in particular, like I hadn't actually seen like the final like Junkertown until
really?
like pretty like the very like with everything, right?
Yeah.
Because stuff comes like, because to be honest, like we were already like play testing other other maps, so yeah, the results really speak for themselves. They did an awesome job with it.
I think a lot of people are going to. This is going to be an amazing map for a lot of people.
I mean, it's got
very unique compared to a lot of the other maps.
Which is definitely something we've been trying to do. It's escort, but like how you fight throughout it should feel a little bit different. Again, it's easy to understand. Like, all right, get on the payload.
Follow it to the end.
No, really, get on the payload, people. And then like work your way through. But then like as you like really start to work to master the map, you figure out, all right, this is how I can move around. This is the high ground I have access to. This is where we should attack from. All the little like sort of nuances of the map that you figure out, and that's where we want things to be different on a map to map, so they're just not quite the same.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. So, is there anything in particular about this map that you guys encountered, like maybe had issues with early on, design-wise? Just sort of like I know Volskaya had some like good stories from interviews that Blizzard has had previously. Are there any good stories for this map in particular?
Well, again, like sort of like early on, like in this very first area, like figuring out like where we were going to put the high ground, and we knew it was going to be, it is like way open, especially like right before the checkpoint. It's pretty open, and figuring out like at one point it didn't have much cover at all because a lot of the props weren't there. So that last area was like a huge killing field. So we had some really crazy fights on it, and figuring out like the right amount of cover was kind of cool. And then like later on, there's the big rotating sort of spinny.
Oh yeah,
like
it's a spinning platform up there.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to work on. And then that section also has like one of the craziest sort of like team flanks. Because like they're right before that like last spin around, there's like a little tunnel like underneath that you can come up to, and it's a really vicious flank. And like I said, we had a lot of like really good, team fights during play tests.
I did notice that this entire bend, there's essentially you have the rotating platform up here. The payload follows a U shape all the way to the end.
But then there's
the
this.
Underpass. It's like an underpass that cuts across, and there's this sort of backway flank as well through the outside, as well as that goes up top with the little rotating platform. So there's gonna be a lot of crazy team fights.
I mean, all those paths are large enough that you could actually have good sized fights in it. Not just one-on-ones, but actually like fit a couple tanks through there, and
like a Reinhardt shield, not just a one player. Yeah. Man, I always feel bad like picking on these guys as hard as I do. But so I do have a question. This is from chat earlier. So people were asking about like core balance philosophies of Overwatch.
Sure.
I guess is there any particular like balancing philosophies that I know Jeff did a very, very long post at one point on the forums about it, which was super in depth. But that was just a question from the chat. If you have any sort of insight on balancing in Overwatch,
Sure.
It's very complex. So
yeah, well, there's a couple like philosophies. Like one of the like sort of big ones is, well, the heroes. Any of the heroes, when we talk about balance on those, it's like we want them all to feel powerful you know, maybe not necessarily all the time, but they all like have their niche where like as a player you feel like, hey, I can make a big impact. I can really like help my team out in a pretty meaningful way. So I mean, it's kind of thing of like, if everybody is overpowered, then everything is balanced.
Yeah.
You know, like that's one of the things we actually try to like achieve. I mean, another thing is also just sort of making sure that like the characters is fun to play.
Yeah.
And like a character being really strong and you killing everyone because it's overpowered is like there's fun to that, but like, you know, again, it's just sort of like the actual like the feel of the character. Like, you know, is that character really sort of playing up to the fantasy? You know, that comes into the design and the balance of the character as well. And then really like after that, it's like we really want to like, you know, make sure that the characters, like I said, they feel strong, you know.
Yeah.
And that's something where I feel like
become like really easy during balancing just to like nerf and then.
Well, I mean, because like they're getting played, you know. I think that's something where, you know, we learned a little bit from like Arisa.
Yeah.
You know, where it was like I don't think she quite hit the like power mark that we really wanted, you know, with her. You know, people were like looking at her like going, oh, the head was too big, you know,
yeah.
like you know, there's like various like things. I think once you actually start playing, you know, these heroes and like, you know, especially new heroes and, you know, in a competitive setting, you start to see a lot of like what really comes out. And yeah, there's going to be some, you know, there's Arisa changes coming as well, I think, in the next
yeah,
patch.
I think her shield becomes a bit bigger.
Yeah.
I think her shots are slightly faster, something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Speaking of buffs, Junkrat, man, you excited?
He's really good now. He's really good. That was crazy. The first time we had a play test where Jeff Goodman, who's our like sort of like lead hero designer, sits right next to me. He was like, "All right, we're putting this like I'm putting up a play test. I put in a bunch of crazy stuff." And we're like, "Okay," like, and he like gives a list of one of the things, and one of them was basically it's like, "Hey, you can double mine." And I was like, "Oh boy."
Oh, yeah.
And Jeff's also a very good Junkrat player. So it was just like this crazy, crazy play test where like both sides had a Junkrat. There was just explosion everywhere. And I was like, okay, forgetting numbers for a second and like how much like damage it does, it's like, again, it captures the essence of Junkrat, which is
Blowing
the more explosions,
up.
the better.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
You know, so that's really sort of like one of the big things, you know. Again, sort of getting to like balance or whatever. It's like figuring out fun definitely is a big part of it, right? What's, you know, being true to the character. You know, I think we can. It's very easy for us to potentially like balance the character in a way that takes away from its identity and like, you know, how players perceive it. So
on a personal level, I felt that a lot with D.va. From how she was first implemented in beta to now, she became a lot more reliant on just defense matrix instead of the overall character.
She definitely became much more of like a team-focused, defensive, you know, stopping a lot of, you know, offense.
And then Jeff Goodman did post about that on the forums.
Yes, he did.
Well.
So I could talk about it. It's great. Yeah. So now, he's basically you're not going to be able to use the defense field as much. It like depletes it, like sort of. It depletes twice as fast, which means you can use it half as much.
Yeah.
Math, folks. And we have this completely new ability called micro missiles, which is actually pretty cool. And that sort of again, it sort of gets sent back to this thing. It's like we built a mech and we didn't put rockets on it. That feels wrong, folks. You know, it's
really
like
kind of funny.
You know, it's like okay, let's because we were like saying it's like hey, if we we're gonna like nerf defense field, like what we were gonna do, we didn't want to just go back and say like let's make the the primary guns bigger. Like we really felt like we had an opportunity to add another ability that would make D.va cooler.
Yeah.
And I think once people see it on PTR soon, you really see it's added a lot to her. We'll see in terms of like balance, like is she maybe a little bit too offensive now?
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'm sure with like big changes like that, there's going to be like a pretty lengthy tweaking process where you go, oh, maybe this is a little bit too powerful. Like
yeah, but I tell you, when like you fire the missiles, it feels awesome. Like she can fly, and like fire, like she can turn on the missiles and they start launching, and she can fly while doing it. You know, it's just, it feels great.
It probably feels a lot smoother to play, too, because when I first started playing D.va, I felt like it was strange that I could fly at somebody, but I couldn't shoot at the same time. But I just kind of got used to it. But now that's different, too, on PTR. So
yeah.
So
again, sort of looking back and saying, like, not just like, oh, is this character too powerful? Is it like getting chosen a lot because of a particular meta or whatever? It's like really taking a look at like all these characters and saying like, hey, what can we do to make them just better from a fun perspective, a family perspective, and then sort of the easiest thing, strangely enough, in a lot of cases to change is numbers, right?
Yeah. So there's another question from chat about I guess the hero release cycle of Overwatch. I guess can you guys talk, or could you talk a little bit about I guess heroes typically came out, I want to say probably about 3 to 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Is there any plans on increasing that, or is it sort of just a creativity thing where you're like, well, this is a great idea, let's put it in, and you don't really follow a set schedule?
I mean, certainly we want like some kind of regular cadence. Like I think if it felt like if the next hero came out next month, but then there was a 5-month wait for the hero after that, that'd feel a little bit awkward. So there's still a little bit of trying to like, you know, we do that with a lot of things. You know, it's like maps come out every so often. Again, not quite completely regular, but like close to it, like sort of pace.
Yeah.
Heroes, we're pretty happy with the pace right now. That might change in the future. You know, we'll see. I mean, certainly it's not an issue of like running out of ideas.
Oh yeah.
We've got plenty. And we know there's things like, you know, we've listened to a lot of feedback in terms of like, you know, players saying it's like, hey, like Overwatch could really use another healer, you know, stuff like that, you know.
It could.
It could. So we'll see.
Speaking of healers, honestly, I'm pretty excited to see the new type of healer meta, I guess, once the new PTR changes go in, because I really do feel like currently Ana and Pro Play at least gets a little bit underused for Zenyatta because of how powerful Defense Matrix was. It was just hard to heal your teammates. And
you're back.
Got saved. That's the other one though. Mercy and Junkrat. I'm excited to see the duo come back. I mean, you got the classic Mercy Pharah, but Mercy Junkrat
also pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially because with the double mine, he's a little bit more airborne than he used to be.
Oh, that's an understatement, man. 2 mines, he's going to be flying.
Yeah, he does.
So I guess I do have a question regarding Doomfist abilities. I think on PTR, you guys did just recently tweak his hitbox, I think, on his right click.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of something personal to me. I found that Doomfist is like a strange character where it feels like I play pretty defensive for the most part, and I sort of just play off of punch cooldowns, where I just punch in, I burst everything, and I uppercut and leap back.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of people, there's like a part of me that wants to say like one-shot mechanics like that almost feel kind of lame that it's on such a short cooldown, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just like...
Sure, yeah. I mean, the one thing we definitely wanted to do with them is like, at least specifically about the punch, you do hear it charging up.
Yeah.
The one-shot part of it is only when like he pins you to a wall.
Yeah.
So there is some like sort of counterplay in terms of like maneuvering around him. I think the more people play with him, the more they'll understand a lot of like the counters to him. In terms of like what can disrupt him, because like if he gets CC'd, he's kind of in really bad shape.
Especially by Sombra.
Yes.
He's just a sitting duck.
Hack totally messed. I mean, if you take away his abilities and leave him with a gun, like the gun's not amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something
like
to do in between.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Like everything else. But like, you're playing against Orisa, like Halt can literally just like pull him out of a move.
Yeah, then he's screwed.
And then it's like he's locked in there for a little bit and then drops, and he's he's a pretty big character. I mean, that's one thing about like Doomfist. So like you can actually like, if you can hold him down for
he's
like
much easier to kill than Tracer, for example.
Definitely.
Yeah.
If you can hold him down at all for any length of time, you could pretty quickly focus him and take him out.
Yeah.
So, Junkrat Mine, Orisa, probably missing a bunch of others. You know, like again, knocking him back. Select Lucio Boop. You know, Farrah Concussive Rocket. So I think there'll be some adjustment from the community as they learn how to actually sort of fight against him.
Mm-hmm.
And the way these things naturally sort of happening is the community figures out what to do with the character first, and then like later on, like the counters come afterwards.
It's easier to do it than to counter it usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least to figure it out.
Yeah,
you know?
that makes sense. For me, the probably the strangest part about fighting Doomfist wasn't necessarily getting one shot or playing around that. It was actually just how displaced you are all the time, because there's not many characters who move you around nearly as much as Doomfist does. Like every single ability, it either knocks you up or pushes you around. And it takes some time actually to get used to that in comparison to other characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar kind of thing with Genji.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it takes some time to understand like how Genji moves around, you know, with the double jumps and everything else.
Yeah, but in Doomfist's case, it's almost like I'm fighting a Lucio, like all the time in terms of like, you know, Lucio, he boops you, knocks you around. Doomfist always is knocking you around with all of his abilities too.
Yeah.
That's what I found.
Yeah. But I mean, something you mentioned like how you're playing around, you know, the charge.
Yeah.
And then using the other ones to disengage. I think something we learned as we were play testing ourselves is that like you can use all the abilities like at once and do like a lot of like crazy stuff, but it does leave you super vulnerable. You know, it's sort of that, do you go all in with all your stuff?
Yeah.
Or do you actually hold something back in case you need to like get out?
That's the cool thing about his ultimate, is that it allows you to go all in and then you're instantly in the air.
Yeah.
So it was really good synergy with that.
Cool.
I think the moment he went Reaper, we were doing better there, because once we get Reaper and we get to have like someone to shred tanks around point, it takes the pressure off of me, and then I'm free to deal with the fair.